This is messing me about. Telling me no rooms available. Oh, now it's saying it's connected to the stream. Or at least it appears to be. What? What? Hello? Fuck off. Work! Okay, this had better be working. Okay, I'm gonna check again by posting a message in Streamlabs. Alright, it is working. 2 different colors. Well. Oh, I managed to freeze the camera as well. Okay. Welcome back. Okay, well, I mean, I think I know what I'm doing. Restarting the fucking chat app messed me up a little bit, but 1.5 minutes in. Session 8, so second session post hiatus. Without further ado, I mean, I'm gonna get pretty much straight into it. To be honest, today is an extremely hot day, and so I'm not going to be doing very much at all today. Not going to be slacking too much, I think, just because of the temperature. Let me just sort. Whoops! I did it again. Let me just sort the camera out. It's a bit tilted. I can't. Yeah, the bed is just so uneven that the camera keeps sort of getting tilted in weird ways. Yeah. Okay. That's kind of okay now. I mean, it's still getting tilted like fuck. I don't know why. But I mean, having a slightly tilted face is not so bad, after all. Yeah, it's just how it goes. Okay, never mind. So that's working. Yep, that's all in order. Mic, camera. I haven't done this test. Although I don't really need to do it very much anymore. Things just automatically sync up because I'm not using the shitty Android anymore. Medium shit Android, I should say. Okay, let's go. So I mean, the position that I'm in is that I'm doing Project 2, Raft. I finished Part A before my hiatus, which took 6 weeks, and I'm back now after the hiatus. So I'm just recapping everything I've done so far. So I've been looking through my code. I'll do a code recap. So all the stuff that I've done, I'm going to recap that, and then I will do a theory recap, which is also going to be looking mostly at stuff that I've already written, because I have all these notes on Raft, theoretical notes. But for the time being, I'm just looking over code that I've written myself. And I've done most of it. The only 2 files I have left are append entries and request vote, the RPC files. So I've split it up so that it's like, this is just kind of state variables and interface stuff. This is the actual internals of Raft with the 3 phases and what do I do during each phase. And then the 2 RPCs, right? And the other 3, this is part C. I'm not even thinking about that yet. And then these 2 and this are just about debugging and testing, config, debug, and test. So not too bothered about those. So that's the position I'm in right now, and I'm just going to start it because it's so hot. The laptop cooling solution still seems to be working pretty well, but yeah, I'm kind of wary of pushing forward with the stream too far into like midday because it's just roasting. And I'm on this. My room is south facing in the kind of east side of my flat, so it's like basically in the mornings the sun just comes down and is, you can kind of tell from my sort of slightly occluded face. I think the best time for streaming is really about 8 p.m. or perhaps 7 p.m. So slightly earlier in the evenings, but in the evenings nonetheless, it's cooling down, and also you get sunlight, but not direct sunlight, and I'm not just roasting. I'm not feeling the urge to just take my shirt off and just do that bare-chested stream or whatever. I don't have any chest hair. You know what I'm saying. So yeah, I mean, whatever. Happy to just get on with it now. I've said all that. I'll just do a quick mic position adjustment first. That's bothering me slightly. All good. Yeah, just looking at the mic level, it seems to be working pretty well. Yep. Have the whole dynamic range and shit. So yeah, let's just keep pushing through with what we've been doing and look at the two RPCs. Okay. Yeah, not too much to say about these. The structs are absolutely just pulled straight from the blueprint, straight from the academic paper, which has a sketch outline of basically the specification I'm trying to conform to. So that's bottom right of my stream on desktop on the Twitch page. You can find a link to the blueprints under resources. See that? Two args. This is what's being. This is the sender arguments. This is the receiver arguments. This is the information the sender sends. This is the information the receiver sends back. This is okay. Then let's look at the send handler. Yeah. Okay. So I mean, the way I've written that is okay. Append entries. Leader ID arrow server. That's just my debug statement. So what's leader ID? I'm not sure I want this to really say leader ID, although I guess I'm writing it as that because I was getting a bit worried about introspecting too hard in these debug statements. But I mean, it would make more sense to just, I think, for consistency, pick this as rf.me. Slightly less confusing to read. Well, not necessarily. So okay, I'm trying to I'm trying to decide if this is the right way of in my print debug statement, which is what this P is. It's my debugging printing, which I can switch on and off with a number. I'm just trying to decide if I want the sender to be represented by rf.me, as in itself, just directly looking at that from the state variable, or if I want to look at the copy of that that's made by args in the arguments that it is sending, because before send append entries is invoked by the sending server, that server will save rf.me into its arguments, and so there's a copy of that, so I don't have to look into the state variable, and I can kind of test that this bit is working correctly, that the arguments leader ID is. Well, I mean, it kind of opens the door to confusion. I'm not really happy that I'm doing that. I think I would rather it's just myself directly represented. I think. Yeah, fine. Let's just do that then. So it's a really small thing. It's just how do I identify who I am, and hopefully the two agree. Unless it is something really wrong. Should be okay. And then server is, yeah, this is just the destination server int. A according to the specification, which is not written here. I think it's written in request vote, but yeah, it's just this is this is the destination of where we're sending this RPC. Called by the sender. This is the ID of the receiver. These are the arguments, and this is where to save the reply. So the sender has to manage all of that. Window just opens, a bit distracting. One moment. She's a bit of an argumentative shit, to be honest. I ask her a question and don't get an answer. What was I doing? Yeah, I was. Yeah, see, I get so tilted whenever my mum does something like that. She just kind of invades my personal space. Whoa. Speaking of, fly come through. Fly will just be straight out eventually. Can't be too worried about fly. But yeah, I need to try to get that to stop tilting me. I'll probably just give her a good roasting when I'm done with the stream. Okay. Yeah. So the sender has to manage, who am I sending to, all the sending arguments that I'm sending, and also a location where I'm going to save the reply arguments. All of them are just done as pointers. This is all, yeah, it just kind of works. It will be easy enough, I think, to get a hold of that. So it's like, yeah, I mean, what's going on here? First I say, okay, append entries is happening, and then I make the call. Right, so this is my debug statement, and then this is the actual call. So rf.p is server, that's the destination. That one, I call it using append entries RPC with the arguments and reply. So just passing it down. This is running a separate Go routine whenever it's called. That's what we should be doing. And so this actually hangs until, the code waits here until a reply is received in that Go routine. So then we continue, and reply received, I'll put in a new line to represent that wait there. Once the reply is received, we do a term sync, which is we're in a 2-fly system in this room now, I think. Or is that just one fly that gets about? No, I think it's 2 flies. Alright, one of them left. I'm loving you. Gotta keep you guys updated with all the fly situation at every moment, clearly. RPC term sync, like I keep saying, I think that's pretty important. It's like RPC term sync is, with every RPC we try to get the terms to sync up. The terms being a big concept in Raft. The terms are, every server has an idea of which term it's at, which voting term it's at. And every time an election is called, a server increments its own term, and basically every time there is a communication, this is really the point of term, it gets incremented when a vote is called. When one of the servers becomes a candidate, it increments its own term, and then every RPC at any time synchronizes terms. It sets terms to maximum, and if something had a lower term, an out of date term, then it gets set to follower automatically. Okay. So let's see that we're implementing that correctly. Let me just make a copy of my right arrow, so that I can keep all of my debug statements clean and in the same style as each other. You know, I'm saying I'm going to run RPC term sync, right? So I lock and introspect my own term with the term that was received in the reply. If my term, right, rf.current term is my term, if that's less than the reply term, I set it to the reply term. rf.current term gets set to the term of the reply. rf.voted for has to get set to -1. -1 signifies that I've voted for nobody in the current election term. So every time I increase a term, the assertion is that voted for has to be reset to a default value of -1. Then I unlock, because I'm done editing the phase variables. I then force myself to become a follower, and that's it. You know, I return. This will then, after that's happened, it will return, and that's absolutely fine because it's not calling anything else, so that can return at that point. After the phase change, else I just unlock. What I'm going to do is look at the request votes one. I'm going to look at request votes at the same time as append entries. So I'm going to look at the senders at the same time. You know, the structs are all just like I said, specified by the specification. There's no question about what those are. But the actual functions, the sender handler and the receiver handler, I'm just looking at those. Look at all this shit. I mean, I've read over all this stuff before, so I'm not too fussed that I need to keep looking over the same stuff over and over again. So just now I'm going to look at send request votes. To just recap that, the sender, the function that handles sending request votes. Hi! Nice to receive a hi. Yeah, alright, let's go on with that. So yeah, it should be pretty much the same standard, the same implementation as the other RPC sender. First thing I do when I call send is I print my debug statement that request vote is getting sent from, okay, I'll change this back to rf.me. Again, I just prefer this to the other thing because this is like directly my state variable for who am I, rather than the copy that I hopefully made correctly and saved into the arguments that I'm sending. But that's, you know, it's an extra step. It's an extra step of relying on your code to work correctly, whereas this is what I really just wanted to say who am I, so I'm going to keep it as simple as possible. Going out to the server, you know, function signature is, this is who I'm sending to, these are the arguments that I'm sending, and this is where I save the reply. There's also done.ch in this one. What's the point of done.ch? I can't remember. I'll have to. It'll probably become clear as I just scroll through the rest of this shit. Alright, so again, first step, I just print a debug statement saying I'm sending request vote. Second step, I actually do the send. You know, I look into peers, all of the peers in the cluster, pick out the server I'm sending to, and on that server call request vote with the arguments in the reply. Done.ch, in that I send reply.vote granted. Oh yeah, reply.vote granted is, oh yeah, so here, actually, do you know what, because I'm confusing myself, I'm going to put in comments saying await reply here. Because the point is the code stops there until the reply comes through. That always happens. If it times out, then it just returns, I think. Not a pest at all. I want to start learning code, but I can't find the coding software that I like. What do you use? That's interesting. I mean, there's a distinction, right? There's a distinction between the programming language you're using and the software you're using to develop with. I'm not sure which one of those you mean. So I'm personally using, for this project, I'm using Go language. That's the programming language that I'm using. And the software I'm using to code with, that's called the Integrated Development Environment, IDE, is Visual Studio Code. Visual Studio Code is really the only one I'm familiar with, so I'm quite happy using that, but programming language wise, that's up to, it depends on what you're doing. If you want to learn coding, I think Python is my suggestion, because Python is the syntax makes it kind of understandable what you're doing at every point. It's clearer and neater than most languages. JavaScript isn't such a bad one to start with either, but it's kind of it's a bit more sketchy. It's a bit more improvised. It's like you can make mistakes and not notice what you've done more easily in JavaScript than Python. And yeah, beyond that, to learn coding, it's like just have a project or some exercises or something. I'm not really hot on suggestions for those. Some sort of inspiration. For me personally, it was maths coursework. So we had to do that, but they were trying to get us to do it in MATLAB, which is a shit engineering language. Well, it wasn't really useful for what we were supposed to be using it for. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna do it in Python, and then I just Googled my way to success, pretty much. That's how I started. But yeah, it's just something like that. You can probably find out on Reddit what a good way of learning programming is. But those are my recommendations for language and IDE. Hope that was helpful. Yep. Here I await a reply, and then done channel is important because the reply is going to have vote. This is request vote RPC. The whole point of that is a server sends it, and then the server it sent it to replies with a vote, and that is called vote granted. So vote granted gets sent into the done channel, and so I need done channel. I think I probably added this manually because I need a reference to done channel to be present so that I can link the two up. So in send request vote, I pass the channel that I want the votes to go to. You can see that happening where I call it in the call election section. Call election section. Here, I'm doing a send request vote. The fourth argument is votes, and votes is the channel from which I'm pulling votes off the channel. Here, you see. Vote gets pulled off the votes, and if it is true, then vote count gets incremented, and then I test if vote count is greater than or equal to majority, and I just keep looping that until I collect all the votes. So that's why done channel is there. I just reminded myself. No worries, no worries. Glad I have time to answer these kinds of questions. If anyone who has like 100+ viewers, you're not going to be able to answer every questions, and then it's sad times. I can kind of imagine how they feel, but I guess you get used to it if you're a big streamer. Not that 100 is big, like try 1,000, you just get completely apathetic. Okay, so that's that, right? That's the basic stuff. I say I'm sending a vote, I say I'm sending request vote, then I send request vote, and in the done channel I specified I send back the reply. I'm also going to pull another RPC term sync, yet another one of those. RPC term sync has to be done on the sender side and the receiver side. At every single exchange of RPC, RPC, by the way, remote procedure call. That's the protocol we use to send messages between servers in our cluster of servers, which are collaborating to run the Raft algorithm, the distributed system. RPC is a handshake. I always say that. Like server A sends it to server B, and then server B sends a reply. So it's always a two-way exchange, and I do term sync on the sender side and the receiver side. So the receiver does it first because it receives the sender's term, and it has its own term, and then it sends back the newly updated term, and then the sender synchronizes it back. So whichever one was out of date will get updated as a result. I'm getting sunburn on my leg. That's not gonna help. Fuck's sake. Do you know what? I'm just gonna leave it. It's probably not sunburn. It's just like slight toastiness. So much sunlight. London, Britain. 30 degrees, 5 days in a fucking row. Mate. This is a disaster. I'm gonna budge the camera slightly just so that my leg isn't actually in the sun. Okay. Sick. RPC term sync looks the same as the other one. If my term is less than the term in the reply, part of me just, I don't know, feels like maybe I should do a common RPC library and put the term sync in both of them. Make my code a bit less duplicated, but I keep saying the reason I don't want to do that is because I will run into convention problems with the lock. So the lock is the thing that prevents the state variables from being edited by two things at the same time. It locks all the state variables, so when I type in lock, that's what happens, and unlock does the same thing. Thanks. Yeah. So wisdomous. Man like Joey Tribbiani. I didn't even know that chat messages pop up like that. That's the first time that's happened. I got a bit surprised. Usually I just hear the ding. Yeah. Lock and unlock. That's what those do. And the reason I'm so reluctant to split the code up is because lock and unlock, like you can't lock twice, you can't unlock twice. Sorry, you can't lock a lock to lock. Why, such wisdom. You can't lock a lock to lock, you can't unlock an unlocked lock. Because both of those things just cause crashes in the code. So that's why I'm hesitant to split it up, because then I'm like, is it locked or is it not locked when I transition from one function to another? When I get used to it, I'm sure I will split it up a bit better than this. But for now, I'm just, as you can see, duplicating the codes pretty much. Yeah, never mind. You can see slight differences. For my debugging, I'm sending, okay, it was append entry sender, request vote sender. So depending on where a term sync fail happens, I get different information in my console. But this is exactly the same as this, right? The current term gets set to the term in the reply. If my term is less than the term of the other server, then I set it to the term of the other server. I set voted for to -1, which represents I've voted for nobody in the current term, the current election term. Do the unlock, say, okay, I'm now a follower. I become a follower. I use an arrow to mean that. I become a follower because my term was out of date, and then I phase change to follower. And if that doesn't happen, I just unlock and do nothing and return okay. So the senders are pretty much exactly the same. Difference, both of them run a term sync based on the information that they get sent back. But this one, in addition to that, also sends over the vote that it received in response to request vote. Because append entries, for the time being, the way it's implemented, we don't care about the response other than to synchronize terms. Okay. Simple enough, simple enough. Yeah, no worries. You know, streaming is easy come, easy go. I know some people are always like, "Hi guys, bye guys," but I tend to, my style when I drop in on a bigger streamer is I just start talking shit in the chat and then I just disappear of my own volition. So absolutely no worries about doing that. All right, that's the senders. I've looked at the senders. I'm now going to look at the receivers. These are a bit more interesting. The receivers are the functions that's the thing that receives the RPC, the B server. So A sends to B, and then B sends back to A. So B, in that circumstance, runs the receivers. So I'll look at which one do I look at first? Let's go with append entries first. See, this also this is yet another copy of RPC term sync. There's a copy of RPC term sync absolutely everywhere. I'm really feeling like I should split this up into another file. But it's different. You can see this one is pulling args.term instead of reply.term. It's a bit of a nuisance to split it up, but I think it is. It'll make the code neater. So do you know what? I'm bravely just gonna do it. I'm just gonna do it. I'm gonna split it up. As in, I'm gonna this bit of code, which is just continue. It's repeated in 4 places. I'm just gonna cut it out somewhere else. Move it elsewhere. As in, move it into one. Just have one copy of it. And that requires a bit of paying attention to do correctly. So I'm going to try to be careful. Basically, the function I want to be running here is with term sync. Term sync in every is term sync always runs an unlock. Honestly, it does look a little bit different. Yeah, if I do this, another thing is I am definitely going to have redundant locking and unlocking. So I'm going to compromise code performance slightly, just in order to have the code slightly neater. And the question is always, do you want to do that? I would say I probably should do that anyway. It'll just make it a bit neater. Okay, let's do a quick analysis, right? So, what's worrying me now is like RPC term sync. I want to write this code once and then copy references into the function that runs an RPC term sync into the 4 places where it's necessary. So the 2 RPCs, append entries and request vote, and for both of those, the sender and the receiver handlers. So yeah, the thing that the sender runs and the thing that the receiver runs. And both of them, the sender is handling the reply from the receiver, and the receiver is just handling the initial send from the sender. And what's worrying me is how that interacts with the lock and unlock. If I'll have redundant locking and unlocking, because if I implemented this the way I'm thinking, then the RPC term sync assumes that nothing has lock, and it calls. It should itself lock and unlock after it's done. That should definitely happen. So that's good if it's called in a context where the lock is not active, but if the lock is active, in order for that to happen, the lock has to be dropped immediately and then reacquired afterwards, which is like a slightly more wasteful. But I don't think that's actually a problem, because all of these functions start with a term sync pretty much. The receivers certainly do start with a term sync. And the senders also pretty much, they don't start with the term sync, but because the the term sync happens immediately after the reply is granted, and this doesn't require a state variable in this case. That means that in every case it's not actually going to be less efficient to log just within the term sync. Okay. Well, I'm going to practically code it out now, so you'll kind of see what I mean. But the point is, I'm going to abstract away RPC term sync into a new function, which is going to be called should I call it RPC term sync or just term sync? Because it is just term sync after all. This is the function that I'm about to write. I'm probably going to write the actual function in Raft flow, or maybe write a new file for it. It doesn't matter too much, but because it's common to both the RPCs. All right, these are the arguments that term sync is going to require. Okay, it's going to require I would say, is it possible to access the name of a function? This, by the way, I'm not allowed to rename it because the RPC automatically calls the thing that is called that has its own name, I think. In order to handle the reply, that happens automatically when the reply arrives, or as in when the receiver is contacted. Sorry, that's what I should be saying. This is automatically called. So I'm not allowed to rename that. I would love to call it the receiver explicitly. Alright, instead, what I'm going to do, term sync. Really, the only pieces of information that are necessary in term sync are the other term. So my term is just rf.currentTerm, and the other term is where's a good place to define this function? Should I just do it now at the bottom here? Yeah, let's copy a signature over because I can't be bothered to like mess about with that. Term sync. I'm not going to return anything for the time being. So yeah, I have my term and I'm synchronizing it with the term of the receiver. So oh my god, I appreciate how confusing my speech is right now. I'm just like struggling to use the correct words at the correct times. RPC is like, it's a communication between two servers, and whoever is doing a term sync is updating, whichever server is doing a term sync is updating its own term using the other server's term. So I think other term is a perfectly legitimate way of writing that down, as in other term is how I'm going to specify the other term. Sync, no, I just copied that out from the other function. What the other thing is, there should be a print debug message context. That's what it is. So context is just what is going to be printed in the print debug, pretty much. And that's the only reason we care about context. And now I'm just going to copy the code over. So one of the examples, I'm going to copy this one. Basically, this fairly large block of code is what term sync is, and it's repeated in 4 different places. So I'm finally just like abstracting it away. Is that a butterfly? No, I think it's a bee. So, I'm assuming this assumes that things are unlocked. It locks it. rf.currentTerm is my term. and other term is the other term, which is going to be either reply term or args term, depending on if it's the sender or the receiver that's handling it. You know, for the sender, the other term is the reply term, and for the receiver, the other term is the arguments, the sender arguments term. You know, I update current term with other term. I set my voting. Who did I vote for is reset, and then I run an unlock. Honestly, here, because I'm doing phase changes, are going to be happening. No, I'm still going to write it this way just for code safety. I really don't want to defer. I don't want phase change to ever be written inside a lock, because if I do choose to make this true, then phase change always needs to acquire the lock itself. So if this is true, then it runs synchronously, and that means that we have nested lock acquisitions, which is obviously going to fail. It doesn't actually crash the program if you try to acquire a lock when it's already locked. It just waits. It just hangs, waiting for the lock to become available. That's something I said wrong a few minutes ago. Wrongly. So that's absolutely, yeah, I'm happy enough. Even if the code is slightly uglier, I'm happy to just unlock completely outside of the phase change. So yeah, that's pretty much it. So current term and other term, and this is term sync fail. I'm gonna do colon, comma, and then context. I'm just gonna print the context. So this is gonna contain, in practice, this is gonna contain the just punching, threatening flies with jabs out here on the punch. Yeah, so context. Context is in practice going to contain the RPC name, append entries or request vote, and whether it's the sender or the receiver, where the phase change fail happened. So yeah, that's pretty much clear. That's the exact function that I want. And so now I'm just going to hope for the best and replace this straight out with term sync. Fucking fly. You know, this is a sender, so it's pulling reply.term as the foreign term, the other term, and the context is this is request vote send. Request vote sender. Oh yeah, so term sync is whoops. This has to be capitalized because I'm exporting it. Syncs terms in RPCs, yeah, whatever. This is just to get rid of the warning. And term sync should be capitalized. This should work fine. Hello? Is it messing me about? Oh, yeah. Whoops. This is all... my throat's bugging me a bit. Yeah, the way because I'm copying definitions, everything is rf dot. Oh, so I don't actually have to export the method at all, do I? No, because it refers to rf. everything refers to RF. So I'm going to keep up with the condition that MIT, as in the project itself, encourages you to go with the condition, go with the convention, sorry, that everything is a method of the Raft object, RF, rather than a separate function that gets exported or whatever. So it just means writing the code as RF dot whatever method you want to be using. Right, and basically just this, copy that into all of the other. So I'm going to copy it into the other sender. You know, it's exactly the same block of code. Pretty sure it's identical. This is the append entries. That's the append entry sender. And then yeah, the receivers are slightly different, so I'm going to just be careful to implement those right. Well, this one's exactly the same. This is it. Oh no, they are a bit different, aren't they? Make sure, oh yeah, so I have to make sure when I'm running term sync in the senders or the receivers that I do not lock before doing it, because it's auto locks. And I don't need the comment either. Just little bits and pieces to watch out for. When I say here, it could deadlock if I send vote granted into the done channel. It could deadlock. I mean, if this deadlocks, that's right, yeah. As in, it could deadlock because if the done channel is not available to receive, but the done channel is always going to be available to receive. You see, he says. I can't really categorically say that that's going to happen. In principle, the done channel is a vote channel, so every time a new vote is called, there will be a done channel, and that done channel will have enough space for all of those RPCs. But that's kind of a really weak assertion, isn't it? Like, it will have enough space, but who knows? Like, if the reply gets sent twice or something bad happens, I don't think that actually happens. But I'm just saying there is a chance that this could deadlock if something weird like that happens. What I mean by deadlock there is just the done channel gets blocked up, so it gets filled up, and then this cannot send into that channel, and the way Go handles that is the code just waits for the done channel to become available. But then again, something is reading from the done channel, so it's just really unlikely that this could happen, but I just put maybe it could deadlock. Cover my base as well. I don't even know if that would help me debug, to be honest. Alright, so RPC term sync, I want to run that here using args term. Because this is a receiver, it's synchronizing with the sender arguments. And this is what it's doing. Current term gets compared to arguments term. It gets updated, it gets unlocked, we do a phase change, blah blah blah. And then it gets locked straight back up, okay? What that means is... so this is the location where... Oh no, it's not, because it has to unlock and phase change anyway. This is okay. This is a location where I have introduced a redundant lock and unlock. That has happened here. The situation where that happens is if term sync does not happen. In that case, I have just term sync. I have been forced. My convention is to unlock after term sync has happened. Like in every case, this exits by unlocking. Even if there is no phase change, it's just directly. It's locked, done the comparison, unlocked, and then, as you can see in this context, it then relocks immediately afterwards to do another comparison. So okay, there will be a performance hit, unfortunately, but I have to say I'm not that interested in making this as fast as possible. I would rather have cleaner code. But it's just something to bear in mind that I might have to not necessarily undo the abstraction I'm doing here of making term sync a common function that everything uses, but I might have to either modify this or just copy this straight back in, undoing the... I mean, it counts as the reason for doing the abstraction in the first place, but it's not such a big deal because I'm only going to do it if it becomes necessary. So I'm not fussed. Oh god, yeah, the temperature is really creeping up now. Should I just dig up the temperature very briefly? Using the mysterious weather app here. It's saying it's only 25 at the moment, which is nice, but yeah, this is what I mean why I'm going to be stopping at like, I'm going to try not to go past 1 PM too far. It's just so hot. Seriously. Yeah, so I have to lock again. Well, sad times, but necessary nonetheless. And the same thing is going to happen in probably the other receiver. The request vote receiver is probably going to work exactly the same way. We term sync with, again, the arguments, but this is now... Oh, this is the request vote receiver. Okay, this is append entries. So that's sorted. Then we run yet another term sync. Current term, blah blah blah. This is identical to what we've had so far, and then we just make sure that we lock afterwards. Okay, there is something I've just noticed here. There is just something I've noticed here. If both of my there's a kind of extra bit of function here that is outside term sync but kind of fulfills a similar role. So I need to decide, it turns up in the receiver of both request vote and append entries, but not the sender. I can't remember why, but this is kind of similar in function to what term sync is doing. Well, not exactly, but the two are kind of complementary. How do I put it? Like, term sync synchronizes the terms and makes things followers. What this does is it's also a kind of term sync check, but it sends an election reset in a particular circumstance. And I'm just trying to identify. I'm trying to identify conceptually when do I want an election reset to happen. What this is saying is that if my term is below, or is at most the other term, so the receiver, then I have been hit by a message, an RPC, that is telling me to election reset. This is a bit strange. This code, like, the code itself just asynchronously sends out an election reset message, and that gets picked up by the follower code, which is waiting for an election to happen. It's waiting for the timeout to happen, and election reset resets the timeout so that the election gets delayed. So basically, what we are thinking about in that circumstance is when do we want the election timeout to be delayed. So okay, let me repeat, because I think it's the heat. I'm continually losing track of what I'm talking about. I think maybe it's time to take the shirt off. It's not like you're even really going to be able to see that on stream. But yeah, I'm now topless. So there you have it. Let me just camera again. Not gonna record my chest. I'm not about that. Alright, hopefully this will cool me down a bit more. It's a nice breeze now because of this fan. Fan is on point, by the way. Despite the fact that it's just coming up to like 20, I mean it's 26, 7 degrees outside, and sunlight is pretty much coming down as well because I'm on the east side and it's just past noon. The fan is keeping the laptop fan is completely off, and the laptop's only at about 70 degrees. That's pretty good, I think. Have to shout out this fan. £6 Wilco white USB fan, 5-volt USB, the standard for any kind of sort of DC charging from USB. 5 volts, I think. Just do my eyes. Yeah, so again, let me just quickly re-explain this in about 15 seconds. When a server is in follower mode, it is waiting for its election timeouts to elapse, and at that point it will go into candidacy mode and call an election. And if I send a message to election reset, what that does, I'm asynchronously sending it, so what this means is I don't actually care if the channel gets blocked. Whenever election reset happens, whenever the thing goes into follower mode, it will just empty out the election reset channel, so it's highly improbable that you're going to get a memory leak as a result of many different threads trying to send election resets into a channel that doesn't exist or has been. No, it doesn't. It always exists, but it can get blocked if nothing is. It only gets unblocked if the server is a follower and is pulling messages out of election reset. But yeah, the server's always pulling messages out of election reset when it's a follower, and if there is no message in election reset, it times out and becomes a candidate. So it's important to know when we want to send election reset, because what we're saying is, when do we want the other server, the server that this is communicating with, or actually this is itself, sorry, this is the self. So when do I want myself to have an election reset trigger? As in, this is kind of, this is keeping me a follower, the election reset. So when do I want to send an election reset message saying, okay, I should remain a follower? That is what this is talking about. Because if I look into this code, election reset, the only place that comes up in is when it comes up in the candidacy code as well. In case something gets sent to election reset, I just get chucked straight back into being a follower. Oh no, sorry, this is the follower code. But it does also happen in the candidacy code. I get chucked into being a follower. So either I am a follower and I remain a follower, I just run my own code again, I loop back on myself and remain a follower, or I am a candidate, in which case I phase change into a follower. Those are the two things that are reading from election reset. So if I'm a candidate or a follower, I'm doing election resets. Or, I just straight off become leader. After that, if I'm a candidate. No, never mind, that's not important. But, yeah, okay, so that's what I want to do. I want to think about when an election reset is necessary, because that's, I think, important to the general flow of the program. What I've put here is that the receiver so the thing that was just sent append entries, or it was sent request vote, that thing resets its election timeout, provided that its term is less than or equal to the other term, which is saying If it is greater than the other term, then that means that the thing that sent it is out of date. The thing it's communicating with is out of date, and so it should not reset, because the other one will reset in some sense. It will become the follower because it failed term sync, basically. So this is saying if my term is, if the other server's term is good, I will election reset. But this should not happen in the sender, but it should only happen in the receiver. I believe that is true. I'm gonna. Do you know what? I'm also gonna put that in my handler here. I'm gonna do it. So I'm gonna change the code up a bit. I'm going to split context into two things. One is going to be the name of the RPC, and the other is going to be the sender or receiver. I'm going to give that a slightly clunky name, but it's basically, is it sender or is it receiver? And so this will require me to rewrite all of these. You see they say not enough arguments because I've split one of the arguments into two. So I'll just rewrite them all. But it's pretty easy to do that. It literally just looks like that in every circumstance where it needs to be rewritten. So this is request vote receiver. This is request vote sender. This is append entries receiver. And this is append entries sender. Okay? So the point of that is that I'm now going to abstract this common pattern. So again, I'm abstracting it also kind of so that I have a bit of predictability. A bit of predictability about whether or not, or at what points things happen with these RPCs, so that they kind of behave in the same way, and I have that in one place. I might split it up into two if I realize I need them to behave differently in different contexts, as in split it back up. It's currently in two. But for the time being, I'm happy to put it into one. One thing. There is just a slight technicality here. You see how it says reply success? I might add the success variable in the request vote reply as well. So yeah, this is making the code slightly weird, I guess. But basically, for both of these RPCs, I want the receiver to send back success in the situation that current term, my term, is less than or equal to the other person's term. As in, I am not out of date. Sorry, no, that's not. I'm not out of date. The other person is not out of date because this is the receiver that's sending success, so it will reject if the other person is out of date. So I'm gonna add in a success variable to request vote as well, even though that's not in the blueprint specification. I'm gonna do it because I want both of my RPCs. I want their receivers to send back a success variable saying that they have received from the other server, and the other server is not out of date. That is basically what this is. You know, send back success if it the thing about success though is that it will I can get my term sync code to set the success variable. I can do that. And then I can, if I need to do something that's contingent on this success variable, I can just read the success variable later in the code without doing another lock and unlock. So yes, that is how I'm going to play it. That's how I'm going to play it. So yeah, request vote is going to have exactly the same thing. Is the sender up to date? True or false? And that's, yeah. Going to be, both of the RPCs now have that, and so I'm just going to extract this bit of code. And move it into term sync. This is only happening on the receiver side. But I don't actually have access to the reply. That my term sync code doesn't actually have access to the reply. Oh, that's a bit of a problem, isn't it? That's unfortunate. That does make the code a bit less elegant. You know, reply.success should be true. Yeah, it could get a little bit complicated. I just have to make sure I don't stretch myself too far, bite off more than I can chew. I first do a term sync. And if a term sync happens, I force myself to become a follower. Shall I then return? And not run the rest of the code? So yeah, the way I'm running this, I'm always updating my own term first, and forcing myself to become a follower, if it was out of date. So why not? So this handles the strictly less than case. When I am out of date, this is what I'm going to do. And then I'm going to return. So the other circumstances, is the other one out of date? If it is, if it's not, then I'm going to send over an election reset. And reply obviously is undefined here. So I'm going to get this function to just return I'm going to get the function to return who won the term sync, as in when the terms were synchronized, what was the outcome? Was my term less than the other term? Were they equal? Or was the other term greater? So I'm going to do that using a quick integer variable, which is going to take -1, 0 and +1. So I just need to I'm going to call it outcome, but yeah. What's the most logical one to be +1? -1 I think should mean that I was out of date. So current term is less than other term. My term is less than. That will be the -1 situation. The 0 situation is that. You see, when you do a generalization, you always run that risk of just making it too convoluted. So I'm just going to get it together now to handle all of the cases. So if this one's less, it will return -1. If they are equal, it will return 0. If else is going to be by trichotomy, it will be strictly greater, and then I want it to return 1. Right, and wow, God, yeah, levels of confusion, levels of noise outside as well. I might just take a little break to get the noise to chill out outside. It's nice having air. Man, yeah, so like, okay, well I know what I'm doing, I guess. It's quite clear. Famous last words, I know what I'm doing, I guess. As in, it's quite clear what this does, and it returns a nice number saying what was the outcome of the synchronization of terms. But yeah, it just, I don't know, I guess it could add confusion. Term sync. Term sync is obviously, when it comes to the senders, for the time being, they're simple enough that term sync is just run at the end, so I don't have to worry too much about the outcome of term sync. The receivers are a bit more difficult though. So for example, we have this. Okay, I run term sync, and that will do the thing that I want it to do. And I care about the outcome of term sync because reply.success is going to be set to whether or not outcome. Well, I mean, it's a success if the thing that sent the request is not out of date. So if outcome is less than or equal to 0, that is a success for the receiver. As in, because it's saying that the outcome less than or equal to 0 is saying, from the receiver's perspective, I am either out of date or equal. I'm either behind, okay, I'll call them behind, ahead, or equal. So behind on term, ahead on term, equal. Basically, if outcome is less than or equal to 0, that's saying that I am behind or equal. Which is to say the sender is ahead or equal, and that is what should be resulting in reply being successful. That is the cue to do something for the receiver. Basically, if the sender is ahead or equal, that is saying like, okay, a receiver should update or something. That's absolutely fine. Oh god, reply.term should equal rf current term. That has to be assigned, doesn't it? Oh dear. So this requires another log and unlog just to read it. God, is it worth me trying to incorporate that into my RPC term synchronizer? Nah, let's keep it simple. I'm just gonna. Yeah, I'm just gonna. Lock. Write down the term and send it back. For the time being, I guess, yeah, that. It is annoying. Both of the receivers are gonna have to do that. Definitely. So, you know, What's the result of the term synchronization if my term is smaller? Yeah, here's a bit of code cluster, but again, reply.success means that the thing that's sent is dominates basically. The thing that sends is ahead or winning, and in that circumstance, which is what this is representing, if my term is less than or equal to, so if I am losing, so if the sender is winning, there's different ways of saying this stuff. It really shouldn't be this confusing, should it? But yeah, pretty much. Outcome less than or equal to 0 is saying, the sender is dominating. And that means that the receiver should reply and not reject the sender, pretty much. That means, it's a success of the RPC from the receiver side as if the sender is dominating, because it means the sender should achieve what it sent the RPC for in the first place, pretty much. Yeah, essentially. Then this is the old vote. Vote should also depend on log updatedness, yep. I may as well chuck this. Reply term is just RF's current term. Then request vote, reply vote granted, and unlock. Okay. Yeah, I would like to be able to assign reply.term outside of introspecting again, as in having to use the lock and unlock yet again. I guess I could get it to return all the terms. I could get send request vote. So sorry, whoops. I could get Raft flow to return all the terms, copies of all the terms. Well, other term is not edited, so maybe I don't need to return other term, because I can just pull it up from wherever. Yeah, I take your point. I'm gonna return my term. But the fucking linter, what has it done? Yeah, my term variable is gonna just highly reduce the number of reads of a state variable, which can, I think, only be a good thing. Cool. Oh, no new variables. Okay, because I defined my term over there, didn't I? Fine. Yeah, because I declared my term in the function signature. Alright. So now term sync is returning both the outcome and my own term. Oof, introduced a bug here. This is going to require a lot of testing. Just simple refactoring that I'm doing here. So I now know what my term is. I'm not gonna. I think this is slightly safer as well than checking twice in case, like, my term gets updated by various different sources and then things get messed up. But this is kind of saying, okay, I'm keeping the code a bit more stable. Just this one transaction is all that matters, as in it's not affected by anything else. I think that's probably better. I don't know, it's a bit difficult to foresee the future too much when you're changing things around so much. Anyway, this no longer requires the lock at all. Whereas the other one, it will require the lock, but I can, yeah, just put it here. Reply success and reply term are both going to be things. And this is, yeah, votes granted and voted for. Okay, no problem. The other thing about how request vote works is, so you know, term sync has now been done the same way, but as you can see, append entries for the time being doesn't do anything else. You know, there is no payload yet. There will be one later, but vote count does. I'll put it afterwards. Vote count does actually do something, and what it does is, you know, in the case of a successful transaction, so success is an important variable in the sense that it signifies that the this RPC should be replied to. In principle, it should not be ignored, and therefore, so the success criterion is I am either out of date or equal, which is to say the sender, who should be replied to, is either ahead or equal, which means he should be the sender, it, lol, should be treated as all those pronouns, should be treated as worth replying to. And so that's why the success variable is important. And so I'm pulling it here, I'm saying, you know, if reply success. But then there are some other circumstances. If my voted for is either nobody or it is, you know, I'm re-voting for the same candidate, so I don't vote for the same candidate twice. It should also, depend on log updatedness, but I haven't done that yet. In that case, I set vote granted to true in that RPC, and I update my voted for to the same thing. So that's it. That's what the RPCs do. I've been through them, and I have hopefully simplified the code in such a way that it still bloody works. Let's find out. So what I'm going to do now is test. Yeah, individually test both of them. I'm going to individually test after initializing the shell to the correct location. I'm initially going to test both of them. See that if they work, and if they do work, I'll probably actually go through them in full just to make sure, you know, that, because we've been through all the code now, I'm done with that. I just want to make sure that it kind of checks out with the debug output. So this one passed. After such major refactoring, I do have to definitely test it all out. Okay, so I don't actually have to delete the out file in order for it to be replaced when the next test comes through. Yep. Okay, so no problems. They're both passing, which is good. So shall I go through the test? Information and see if I can understand what's going on. I just want to, so request vote and append entries, I don't exactly understand the notation here, so I'm just going to check that. So I haven't actually looked at it. The receivers. Yeah, term sync is always, you know, the way I've coded all the RPCs, term sync is always done at the beginning. And then terms are just not edited at all, in any way. Right, everything stays the same after that. I read the success, I read the term, and then I just reread the same variables. I read some other variables and then set some new variables, but I never edit the term after that, and that applies to both of the both of the RPC handlers and also the senders. In which case, yeah, the term sync happens it's the last thing that happens. It's immediately after the reply is received, and then a return happens. So immediately before the end as well. So yeah, that's something to bear in mind, and something that's going to make working with all this stuff simpler. We know what my term is, so okay. What am I saying here then? The way I've written this, append entries. Okay, this is how the send is happening. Then I have a bar saying, did current term happen, and what is outcome and what is my term? Other term is not. It is known about. It's written down here, but yeah, I'm only going to introspect for the time being. I'm only going to introspect my term. Or shall I introspect both my term and other term? You know what? Let's do that. So just a bit of code simplification, I guess. This will go in both of them. What about the senders? Well, in the case of the sender, the other term is not available immediately. It just appears here. So yeah, for introspection purposes, for the time being, I'm just going to leave it as it is. As in, I'm thinking about, at what points can I print for debugging purposes all the terms and all the information that I have here. And I'm only doing it where it's kind of easy to do it. I'm not going to try to hack it to print everything I can. Like, I'll accept my limitations for the time being, and if it turns out it would be useful to be able to get more information, then I'll just think about it. But this is okay for now. So yeah, I have other term available. I have my term available as well. So yeah, rf.current term is just going to be my term. VS other term, vote, because yeah, vote granted is. Oh right, I'm actually reading off vote granted. Alright, so it's my term and then it's the vote granted. Should I do my term VS other term? Yep, let's do that. And in append entries in the same place, I'm just going to have. It's just talking about success, isn't it? I don't need success to be written about. So again, it's only the receiver that is writing about term sync. Should I just get the sender to write about it as well? Why not? Just full information. So this is the sender would just do a print statement here, and it would say but the sender doesn't even introspect its own term. Does it? Oh no, it does, but it. Okay, I understand. Sorry. Bit of redundant codes, but it's quite minor. You could even just call it a bit of boilerplate. But it will make things clearer, I think. Other term and my term, there they are, and outcome is declared and not used. Oh, okay, so I'm just gonna gap it like that just to make sure I'm not using it. So I'm pulling other term out. I'm basically just getting all the information. So it's a three-stage process. First I confirm a send, then I confirm a receipt, then I confirm a finished send, if you see what I mean. So RPC being a handshake. My debugging at the moment is saying, first I post to say, okay, the send was initiated. Then I post to say, okay, the receiver received the send and initiated the response. And now I'm saying, okay, the sender received the response. So those three steps. Those 3 steps are what I'm debugging at, as in printing at each step. Why does it say leader ID here? No, it's just the other ID, but I don't have another ID variable, so why not just leave it like that? But this should be written as rf_me and server, shouldn't it? Yeah. It should match this one. And then it's my term vs other term. So this, yeah. What is other term? In this case, it is reply.term. Why is this returning okay out of interest? I don't know, it just does. Okay, it works. Cool. So that is now full introspection. You know, each one has a my term vs other term statement. And in the vote case, the receiver also has a reply.vote granted at the end. Oh, I'll put in vote just to make it clearer. Okay, now I've really made the debugging solid now with all that, so you'll see when we run the tests how easy it is to read what's going on. Should be good. Close to the end now. I will just, I will stop working once I read through this, which should have passed again. Yep, it's been passing reliably now. Thankfully, it means I did do it right pre-hiatus, and my refactoring has also been okay. So I'm just gonna go through this to just demonstrate, to see how clear my debugging is now. And after that, I might spend a bit of time just doing a kind of a bit of notepad jotting down to just summarize my code so far. And that's before I start looking into the theory. Just to get as tight as possible an understanding of what my code is doing. And then I'll recap the theory in the next session and be in a position to start part 2. Will be good. I'm taking my time. I'm absolutely not in no rush. So let's have a look. Okay, I'm gonna just move my camera. Sorry, I'm gonna move my camera to a slightly different position. Move my butt. Sorry. Alright. Alright. Let's, God, just hovering the camera over the end stream button there is just like monkass. Alright, so let's have a look then. Let's have a look. How does the program work? So this is one of the tests, right? For starters, 0, 1, and 2 start off as followers because initialization. Right? So actually, just a second, sorry. Okay. How does it all work? Well, 1 becomes a candidate because of timeout. 1 is now no longer a follower. Request vote is sent from 1 to 0. 1 requested votes. Request vote is sent from 1 to 2 as well. 0 becomes follower because of term sync fail in receiving the request vote. Same thing happens to 2. And then 0 and 2 both reply. Both reply to yeah, don't forget the one on the left here, my term, is after updating via RPC term sync. So 0 fails term sync, and so its term should, after update, surely its term after update should be 1. Right, so 0 received a request vote from 1, failed term sync. Ah, sorry, I'm forgetting to update my term. So you can see current term gets updated, but my term doesn't get updated to reflect current term. I think that's fine. Let's just remember that happens. It might get a bit confusing, but for the time being, yeah, my term is the original my term, and the other term is just yeah, and this is the only circumstance in which a term is actually changed as a result of RPC term sync. So my term is always original, and other term is also always original because it's comes from the data, so you can't edit it. You know, it's a different computer's variable, so we definitely shouldn't be editing it, or we'll get inaccurate information. So yeah, my term was 0, and the other person's term, namely 1's term, was 1. And so we get 0 vs 1, and the vote comes back as true. Right, and so it sends back these votes, and then 1 receives these votes from 0 and 2. And it's 1 vs 0. Again, 0 is the original term. But after this has happened, the term of 0 has been up, and 2 has been, has been updated to 1. Right, so 1 receives votes and is now leader. It was elected with 2 votes, which is correct. So it sends append entries. They reply 1 vs 1. 0 and 2 both get election resetted because that was a successful send. Because these are equal. So that's successful. My throat is really dying out now, so yeah, I'm glad to stop streaming soon. God, it's that cold. I might have to just take 5-minute breaks in later streams just to deal with my throat. go out and cough pretty much mucus. Unfortunate facts of life. Yeah, so it sent these out. It's 1 vs 1, no problem. Maybe I should get the login just to have the timings. Maybe I should do that. I'll see later if I want to do that. So it does it again, 1 vs 1, and these reset, and that's going to keep happening for a while. It's term 1. Everyone is reporting term 1. And at this point, 1 stops being able to communicate with the others. So 0 becomes a candidate, times out, and stops being a follower, request votes. 2 becomes a follower because of term sync fail. And you can see that here because 0 Yeah, this is confusing. I'm gonna make a small edit to my debugging. Instead of putting me and my term at the front, I'm gonna put sender term and receiver term. That could get confusing for other reasons, but it will keep the order of things the same, basically. So yeah, my term vs other term. In the sender, that's fine, but in the receiver, these should be the other way around. So other term vs my term. And the pend entries receiver is going to be the same. It's just the receiver. The sender is fine to have it in the original order. Yep. So it just matches. You can see here, me is in the same position as my term, and the other ones is in the same position as well. So yeah, this is a little bit of perfectionism, I guess, but I think it will just make it faster to do the upcoming parts. If I'm just slowly doing the refactoring and laying the groundwork. So let me just reload out. 1 becomes a candidate, leaves being a follower, requests votes 1 to 2. These both term sync fail because they have term 0. The receivers have term 0 compared to term 1 here. They become followers as a result of that, and then 1 received votes and becomes a leader because it was elected with 2 votes. Then it sends append entries. 1 goes to 0 and 2, gets replies, and then it's even, and they're all 1, and these get reset, and that will just keep happening. Term is always 1. And then it stops being able to communicate. 0 times out, becomes a follower. No, sorry, becomes a candidate, leaves being a follower. That's what the X is. So arrow is becomes, X is leaves. Requests votes. 0 indeed requested votes. 2 becomes a follower because of term sync fail. Because 1 is not communicative at the moment, by the way. So 2 replies to 0, 2 has a term of 1. And that's why it updated and why the vote is true. Well, why the vote is true is strictly a slightly different reason, but never mind. Then that is settled. 0 received votes and it became the leader, elected with 2 votes. And so it's now sending append entries. 2, 1. 1 is still not communicating. 1 is still sending append entries, but they're not being received by anyone because it's not communicating. So 2 replies and gets reset as a follower because 0 is at least up to date. With 2, it's equal, and that means it sends an election timeout. So that's settled, and then the 0-2 communication happens again. 2 becomes a follower again. Same thing here. 1 is still failing to send. You can see here this is a snippet of the full process. there's no term sync happening because the terms are synced, but because 0's term is at least as much as 2's one and 2 is receiving, that is the trigger. That is the trigger for an election timeout reset on the part of the receiver too. So receivers reset their election timeouts if the sender dominates the receiver. So the sender's term, the one on the left, is at least greater than or equal to the receiver's one. That's how it's been designed. That's what causes the election timeout reset. One is suddenly communicating again. The reply finally arrived, or this might even just be a timeout reply, now that I think about it. One is... So 0 is leader and it's communicating with 2. So 0 sends a message out to 1. 1 sends a message out to 2, but 1 has now become reconnected, so 2 replies. But because 2 is dominant, 2 does not get reset because this fails the success criterion of the sender dominating the receiver. So you can see the sender is less than the receiver. So it fails the success criterion, and the penned entries therefore fails to reset election timeout on the side of 2, which is again what should happen. On the other hand, when the reply comes back, it's the 1 to 2 reply is 1 vs 2. So 1 realizes it's failed term sync, sets itself to be follower, which is what should happen. Meanwhile, 1 replied to 0, they're even, and 1 is now 1 is still follower. It just gets reset because it's now up to date on term, and 0 is still leader. 2 gets set to follower as well. 1 has left from being a leader. 1 has also left from being a candidate. This is slightly buggy. That is, I know why this has happened. I think I can quickly fix that. It left 1 stopped being a candidate a long time ago, but it didn't actually leave the loop of code because there's a synchronous phase change basically. Yeah, but I do want it to stay this way. It's a bit perverse, I know, but it's just a minor kind of curiosity, slight error in how the debugging print statements are working. But it's completely ignorable. I can ignore that because I know why it's happening, and the reason is because I'm putting the exit statement when these functions exit all the time. They're at the end there. If there's a phase change and then an exit, I put it after the phase change. And this is, I think, the only case where there is a synchronous phase change. I was starting to wonder if I even needed synchronous phase changes, but the reason I have one here is because if the candidate is elected, I want it to become a leader ASAP, because I want the heartbeats to be sent out immediately. That's why there's a synchronous phase change here, and that's why when it stops being a leader, it only then does it exit. Well, actually, yeah, because phase change calls in the same context then. I'm calling phase change. Phase change is always synchronously called, but because it's true, it calls the leader code in the same thread. So it directly proceeds onto the leader code. And only once the leader code returns, does it return here and it exits out of candidates, or it says it's exiting out of candidate. Just something to bear in mind, but that's why it says that, even though 1 stopped being a candidate a long time ago. It's just a small... what's the word? I don't even want to say curiosity. I want to say like one of those finicky details that's a bit random, idiosyncrasy, I guess. It's definitely wrong, but not worth fixing. That's what I'm saying. So yeah, 1 has definitely exited from being a leader now. 0 is still successfully sending messages and syncing with both of these. So 0 is running the town basically. Sends to 2, sends to 1, receives, and then 2 and 1 get reset, and you know, the append entries with the line obviously is just saying like the RPC receipt was successful, and these are the terms and whatever. So yeah, it was 1 vs 2ing here, but then it became a follower, whatever. And that keeps happening until 0 stops being able to communicate with 2. You can still communicate with 1 though. You can see that here. 2 became a candidate because it timed out, so it left being a follower. It requested votes, but nothing is communicating with 2. Oh, you say that, it is actually. Oh wait, no, it isn't, sorry. So 2 has now become disconnected. And append entries, What's happened here? I'm getting zeros here. So everything was working normally until all of a sudden 0's term got set to 0 for some reason. I think, well, okay, we don't exactly know what's happened here yet. So let's just try to follow the code, the debug statement. So 0 sends to 2 and 1. 1 replies to 0. What could this be in response to? Which RPC? Do we have RPC IDs that we can use to identify RPCs? That should definitely be a thing. But it's not implemented in this code, but something to think about for later. Like, if we could identify the RPCs, then we could match which of these statements is from which RPC. Because this is like, I don't know what has caused this to happen. You know, 0 has become disconnected, clearly. But then there's some chaos happening here with the 1, 0 and the 0, 1. Do you know what's happened? I think a term of 0 happening. 0 is the default value of all of these variables. So it probably means that there was a timeout and the variable wasn't able to be set, or it had to be set to its default value. If we look at the append entry sender, which is what's relevant here, await reply here. Right, then the reply comes through, and reply.term, because the reply was not received, this is just its default value, and so other term is set to 0. That's why, you know, if there is no receipt, the other term gets set to 0. Okay, that's a slight nuisance. Technical detail in the way I've implemented the debugging statements. I don't know if I want to bother fixing that. Basically, OK gets set to false. So the code should just not progress if it's not OK, surely. Should we just return if not okay. You know, the call happened, it failed, and so should we just reject the entire term sync procedure? Yes, because I think that's kind of what I expected to happen anyway. If it times out, we really should not be doing anything. Okay. That should do it. There's a boolean that's being returned here. Oh, it's just okay. Do I want my senders to return anything? They may as well. They may as well. So I'm just going to edit that. So both of my RPC senders return the OK boolean, which comes out of the call function, which I think just says whether or not there was a timeout. Yeah, definitely. If there is a timeout, do not even touch. The way I've designed vote granted and all that stuff is that if there is a timeout, it doesn't actually receive votes at all. As in, nah, do you know what? I think you're right. If there is a timeout, vote granted should come through with false. That is what happens here by default, but I don't want to. I want to make the code more legible, so I'm gonna write it like that anyway. Just because I don't want to, just in the interest of saving lines of code, make it less clear by saying, oh, the done channel is going to be like is going to receive the default value of this, which is false if it times out that. Not about that, man. Okay, so am I done here? God, yeah, I'm going to have to test it again. Yeah, well, it's fair enough. I mean, generally, you know, an RPC timeout, it should be returning. In this case, I'm returning after sending a vote of false to the done channel. That's absolutely fine, but just as a general principle, that should be returning. So let's debug that. Still passed. Yep, so very much the same kind of thing. Let me just flick through all of it quickly. One is winning in term, so these both term sync failed, became followers, and after the reply, one received votes, was elected leader. And this is just a standard procedure we've been seeing so many times. Okay, something changed when 1 got disconnected, 0 became a candidate, requested votes from 2 and 1. 2 became a follower because of term sync fail, because, yeah, 0 increased its term to 2. Oh, shit. Request vote timeout should be printed. Oh, God, wait, hang on, let me just do that as well. That definitely we should be printing timeouts. I'll just put in a symbol to denote timeouts. Shall we just invent a random symbol? Question mark. So yeah, there's no point even, because we have no information after a timeout on the other term. I'm just not going to put in any term information, literally just pure timeout. Alright, same again. In this case, 2 becomes the leader. These both term sync fail because it's 1 vs 0 on all of them, and they get settled, and 2 becomes leader and starts sending append entries. These reply. 2 sends to 1 and 0. Oh, these are the request votes getting settled, okay. Replies and flattenings, and they both become followers. That's the procedure in full. Send, receipt, 1 vs 1, acknowledge, 1 vs 1. Then, okay, 2 gets disconnected. 1 times out becomes follower, request votes, doesn't get anything from 2. 0, yep, term sync fails, 2 vs 1 replies, and they are settled at 2 vs 1. It receives votes and gets elected leader, and then starts sending append entries. 1 to 2, 1, 0, 0 always responds, and it's 2 vs 2 now. It gets reset to follower. That gets settled. It's still not in contact with 2. 2 vs 2, 0 is follower. Basically that should be what keeps happening, but it cannot communicate with number 2. Yeah, maybe I should just rename them A, B, C, D, E by converting the numbers into letters for later tests. I think I might do that actually. Yeah, because I want the terms to be numbered, separately. So I want the IDs to be letters and the terms to be numbers, just to make them a bit more distinct. 2 is still sending append entries, not communicating. 1 vs 0 is fine. 2 is sending to 0 and it's not working out. 1 is sending to 2, it's not working out. 2 follower, term sync fail. 2 is back and alive. It just became in contact with 1 again. It gets term sync and settled to term 2. And so 2 exits being leader and candidate. Yep, so one of the append entries from 2 to 0 timed out. Then yeah, we have 1 sends to 0, 1 sends to 2, 1 sends to 0. Okay, no, 2 is now back in contact with the others. It's strange, I don't feel like all the timeout messages are being sent. Or maybe we'll just get bombarded with them at the end or something, I don't know. But yeah, 1 is now leader and it's leading with a term of 2. So yeah, 1, 0, 1, 2, and settled, they're all on 2. Here, so here we have another timeout just came through. Yeah, these timeout messages are not helpful because we can't tell which RPC they correspond to, and they just kind of arrive randomly at the end. So maybe I'll just have to stop logging timeout messages until I can at least find a way of logging, identifying the RPCs themselves, getting IDs that tie all these messages together if they correspond to the same RPC, send and receive handshake. Would be good. Would be good. At any rate, 1, 0, 1, 2. This is all working now. 1 sends to... oh yeah, 1 got broken again. So 0 became a follower. It's in contact with 2. No, it isn't. 0 becomes a candidate. Exits follower, requests votes. 2 does the same thing. They're all completely disconnected. 1 still thinks it's the leader. 1 doesn't stop being a leader until it receives a message from someone else. I think that's fine. I don't need it to check if it's receiving replies from RPCs. I think that's difficult and pointless. So yeah, everyone is just fully disconnected. Lots of timeouts are coming through. There's just going to be bombardment of timeouts. 1 is sending append entries repeatedly. They're not working. Request vote was sent, but because no votes were received at all, it's just completely hung. Once the timeouts come through, the votes of false are going to be sent through. So that is going to happen. So here we have it, for example. 0 received vote as candidate and lost vote. Then it re-request votes. 2 comes... yeah, so the lost vote situation, initially I thought that was kind of rare. But... see, it happens here if all the votes come through and it doesn't win, and that's why I think it's helpful for votes to keep coming through even when timeouts happen, which is why I put in this line. You know, I'm sending a vote of false through back to the channel that's going to collect votes if there is a timeout, and then I return. So that's totally fine. Once they finally come back to life, 2 gets set to follower because of a term sync. You know, 0 is now voting term 4. I think 0 requested votes should come with a... current term introspection. I want it to say what its term is when it requests votes, definitely. Actually, sorry, I should set... these corresponds to the term, not the current terms, and the term is defined here. So I'm just introspecting that there. Okay, that's cool. You know, it's requesting votes. 2 fails term sync and therefore it votes for 0. That's completely fine. 4 vs 3. 0 and 2, that gets settled. 2 is now up to date on term. So we're going to get 4 vs 4s, whereas 1 is still disconnected. So 2's vote got interrupted as a result of this. It was waiting for votes. They never came. But it got a heartbeat from append and a vote. As in, 2 received an append entries message. Here it is dealing with that, and the receiver says, like, if the sender's term is greater than or equal to your term, which is the case here, and was the case here, in fact, then you should send yourself a vote to interrupt, and that's what happened. 2's vote got interrupted as a result of that. And then they are quits. 1 is still not working, but 2 is 0, 2, 0, 2. That's all working normally. 2 becomes a follower. A bunch of old timeouts, and then 1 finally gets reconnected. But by now the term is 4. 1 becomes a follower. Term sync fail. That is settled. Nothing else changes. 0 is still the leader. It's 4 vs 4 in all of them, so 1 is no longer leader, and as you can see, this is just the standard. 0 is leading both of them. Some old timeouts come through. I really should get rid of these messages. So many timeouts, bloody hell. And then 0 is working normally. Continues to work normally. Pass. Okay. Save, why not? Why not save that? Okay, so I'm done editing this. I'm just going to quickly look into my to-do because there's something in my to-do that I remember that I think is done now. Term logging for every RPC is now done. And number 2 on my to-do list, the guarantees for votes to be synced with terms. At the moment, that is still not done, and I'll bear it in mind that I said that I should do that. That I should guarantee that votes correspond to terms. As it is, that's kind of happening in a non-strict way. It's just happening because term is always getting incremented, and yeah, it's slightly unreliable, I guess, doing that, but it seems to be working. Nonetheless, I will just leave that in my to-do list as a kind of thing to consider in the future. Also notice it says in the outline, what can trigger an election timeout reset? There is only one thing that can trigger that, and the answer is every RPC receipt where the sender is up to date. So I'm very precise on that. It's only at the receive stage the sender initiates, and it's whether or not the RPC is successful, right? Which is the same as the sender being up to date, which I'm gonna abbreviate to up to date. Right, and then the RPC receipt triggers the election timeout reset, and that is the essence of how election timeout reset works in my version of Raft so far. Okay, that's it, we're done. We're done going through the code. Refactoring, modifying, that's all good. It's really quite robust now. This is the only thing that it kind of, this is the only thing that it kind of occurred to me I might want to possibly update down the line in the to-do is to make sure that the votes are synced with the terms explicitly. So what could I mean by that? Something like, oh, okay, the votes should be every request vote RPC should be tied up with a term that is not just the term that's being synchronized, but also just I am voting for this term, and that should always be implemented explicitly. It's fair enough to do that, I think it's reasonable, but for the time being I don't need to, so I'm going to leave it there. I'm not gonna be too much of a perfectionist implementing stuff. If it turns out to be unnecessary in the future, I'll regret it. I've already been a perfectionist going through the log with the output. So I'm just made sure that everything works exactly as I've intended to, not just the actual tests passing, but like every detail is as I expected it to be. You know where it says here tests passed and it just stopped writing the test down? I think there were lots of timeouts that would still have been coming through at the end. Because I've been logging timeouts. You can see all these question marks peppering stuff. But that's okay. So yeah, okay. Last thing I'm going to do very quickly before I leave. Ooh, new fan has to stay up, or else problems. Last thing I am going to do. Oh, sorry. Let's move the webcam out of the way because it's kind of like the lack of freedom of movement is kind of annoying. Can I? Yeah, let me, because I've moved it now, so I have to sort out the position and the focus. Yeah, something like that, and then I'll just refocus it. Okay. Yep. So let me just the last thing I wanted to do is I want to do a summary. Well, it says here fix outline, so I may as well actually fix the outline first. Sketch. So what I care about is the election reset. Let me just see if I can find that. That should be general doing, shouldn't it? Candidacy timeout. Yep, so this I'm just gonna... Yep. This is it. So I'm gonna put that in the candidacy timeout section, which is, yeah, the section that we want it to be in, pretty much. Yep. Okay. So I just want to strip down my to-do list by putting this in. I know that this is allowed to happen during the candidacy as well. Candidacy timeout reset can happen to... The leader doesn't check for it, but the candidate and the follower definitely do check for it. As it is for the time being. So I'm going to make a new text document that just summarizes the code so far. What is the code scrap? This is just my scrap paper for things that I implemented before. So it's not really, not directly related to Raft. I want to just write down a very brief summary of how my code works. Everything that we've been over now. Let me see if I can do that. I'm not even sure how this is going to work out entirely, but I'm just going to try to write down this summary. So phase cycles, that's my first thing. I'm going to just put my leg up in a random position, just because I don't want to accumulate sweat. See, now I actually have space that I can just move my hands about and like make the gestures. All right. So let's go through it quickly and just do the summary, and then I will chill because it has been, this stream has been a few hours of just very nitpicky details. So it hasn't been that much fun, I have to admit, but it's not so bad. I mean, it's just straight progress in a straight line, and it really is just laying down the groundwork for what will be picking up quite a bit in the future once we start doing part B and part C. So phase cycles. This is how Rafto works. The basic idea, right? So So from the let's start from the leader position. Heartbeat. That's the name of the function. I'm just gonna come up with some arbitrary notation for it. Leader. Check. If it's a leader, it just sends heartbeats. And then it runs itself again. Yep. Away selection. So I'm just writing up the basic. I'm just doing a kind of summary, and there's not that much that I'm thinking about at the moment, other than just summarizing. As in, this is the election timeout phase. Let's call it something shorter so that it fits. And obviously, election timeout can also result in candidacy. Yeah, so this is if it receives an election reset, and candidate is if it doesn't receive an election reset. So if it actually times out. All of them just straight up return. Okay, yeah, call election is kind of long, so I'm going to do it in this way. You know, it sets up the vote. That's literally just defining some stuff, and then it requests the votes. And the result of awaiting votes is election reset. That can happen, or if it doesn't get reset, it can receive the votes. And when it's counting votes, it either gets elected or not. So that's my summary of how call elect works. A candidate, yeah. So this is the point where it is in fact interruptible. Because this all happens pretty fast, you know, candidacy check, count votes. Is that it? Sorry, I'm just trying to fit this into one line. That's why I've gone silent, thinking about the simplest way of doing that. ER is what's going to mean election reset. Basically. Yeah, the point of ER this is the thing that I implemented today. RPC receipt where sender dominates receiver. Dominate is my greater than or equal to in term. It's just a notation I invented for that as a way of putting that, to be honest. And that's the only case where that happens. RPC receipt where the sender dominates receiver. Abstractly, that is what causes an election reset, and ER is where election or reset is awaited. Some more details. Send heartbeats. Bit of information on that. That is. Yep, these are the two things that happened in RPC term sync. That's what heartbeats is. It just sends append entry to all. Don't handle reply. What else is important? Election timeout. Await ER, or what else happens in an election timeout? Await ER or it's just a vowel sound that us Londoners make when we say or await ER or election timeouts. Okay, what else is there? That's done. Okay, a few other things here. Request votes. Send request vote to all. Lovely, truck has just started. I'm trying to get this done if I can, ASAP. So we also have await votes and count votes. Until majority / everyone voted / ER. Those are the things that can stop await votes. And finally count votes. Checks majority, and that's it. Okay. And okay, let's also just loop through the append entry and the handlers for the send append entry and this is literally just standard term sync. This is literally just standard timeout and nothing else. Okay. So append entry does nothing at the moment. Yeah, it's all in the term sync function, but I kind of know that. I've just written this as term sync. This is also in the term sync function, but I have descriptive text, so I'm not going to get too confused about how I've written that. Timeout equals return. Yeah, it's just a mental note there. So yeah, request votes, and this is it. I'm done after I've written this out. The last bit of my summary. No need to re-explain everything because I've already spent the time doing that. Oh wait, I forgot to write about the receiver. Okay, I'll do that in a sec. So I was going to do the request vote sender first. So send request vote. Does all the usual things, but also does the actual voting. Doesn't actually matter really which way around these two happen here. Either is fine. If it says could deadlock, okay, well obviously that's a bug, but yeah, I think it is better to do it this way around. Those two lines are for term sync. So yeah, the request vote sender Yep, and okay, so let's just write about how the reply handlers work. With the append entries reply handler does a term sync and the success, which is kind of part of term sync as well. Okay, fine. Success is abstractly, that's what a success is, the sender dominating the receiver. Receipt, where success. I'll just do a logical and there. Receipt and success is what causes an election timeout. So yeah, it just does that to reply term as well. It doesn't append entries literally does nothing, even the. See, I've made them a lot shorter, but without the boilerplate, it's clear that they really do nothing. Whereas the voter is a bit different. This is the standard term sync code. Payloads, here we go. Vote if tier success and voted for nobody same. And then, yeah, updates voted for. That is it. I think not that many words at all that I've used here, and these like sort of diagrammatics pretty much cover absolutely everything in this code, all of the details. And that was really the point of this. You know, what I'm doing is describing everything in an abstract way that I can look to in order to sort of figure out how the code is working. And doing the summary as well has given me a clear and simplified idea of each of these steps, which I am, you know, in isolation familiar with, because I've just gone over them all. Yeah, I haven't written about the order in which this stuff happens, admittedly. Maybe I should actually add a note for that. Beginning of receiver and end of sender is my current convention, isn't it? After receipt, ACK. So yeah, the send, receipt, and the acknowledgement phases. So the acknowledgement is the acknowledgement of the receipt, which is the third phase, the line phase. Yeah, so that's kind of clarified that. So in my notation, send is the right pointing arrow, receipt is the left pointing arrow, and acknowledgement is the straight line. I'll mark those phases. Anyway, that is it. I think that covers everything in a nice, easy to understand summary of how my part 2a has been implemented so far. Append entry really does do nothing for the time being. Both of the RPCs do these things. And request vote also sends out the votes and then collects the votes, which are as per reply but false if timeout. Does it collect all votes? Request votes, sender. Well, no, it doesn't, because each one is an individual, handles an individual RPC. So yeah, it should say collect vote as per reply. And false if timeout, which is an explicit if timeout, because timeout usually should do nothing, but here it explicitly returns false. It did that even before I coded that in, because it just defaults to false. The boolean in Go defaults to false if it's not been assigned, which is what happens if a timeout happens, but I made it explicit. Feel better. Feels good, man. That's it. Okay, I'm done. This is my summary. It's in the Raft code so far document. That's going to go up on GitHub, obviously. Everything I've done today. Everything that's as it has been organized. I'm not going to bother updating the theoretical sketch. That's really what I'm going to be doing tomorrow. But my practical sketch is now in the code so far, and also in the to-do as well. This is just my, possibly I should do this in my code. So those two, Raft code so far, and I'll call this Raft code to-do. And then index is just an index of all the functions in the code, which I have now moved about quite a bit. So I guess I can just do that. But yeah, whatever. I mean, that's all minor stuff. And this is just something I probably won't need to look at again, because it was just helping me to write out the code. But now that I've been over it, I have my summary, which is both shorter and covers pretty much everything in the code that I can think of that's important. Other than, okay, I haven't spoken about like the initialization procedure and the stuff that comes in the standard raft.go file, which I haven't edited, but that's fine. I can talk about that later. Okay, I'm finished for today. Let me just sync this up. 2.8. Sent off to GitHub. I'll do a git push straight off the bat. And yeah, just close everything else down, I guess. That's sorted. Close all the windows and exit, okay. Okay, well, that was a bit of a kind of extended session to just finish that one section, which is my recap of everything that I've done in my code so far, without too much paying attention to the theory, which I'm going to recap in the next session. I'm going to start looking over the theory and, planning next steps of action, and perhaps even start reading part B. Although, let's not get ahead of ourselves. I've found it easier to just keep a really slow and meticulous pace with this kind of difficult project. So I'm happy to just leave it there. Having done the recap of the code, I'm going to recap the theory. That's starting in the next session. Next session is going to be on Friday. There's no way I can, I want to be a bit lazy, so Thursday I'm busy most of the day, and the morning would just be a bit of effort, and then I want to take tonight off as well, just to chill. So Friday? I would say Friday, I would say Friday morning, but to be honest, it's just so hot at this time of the day. I think evening might be better after all. Or even though I just get ridiculous moths. Which will it be? I'll decide on the day. Okay, I'll decide later. So I've put on Streamlabs, I think it says Friday 11 AM. I might put that off onto the evening session, in which case you'll just be able to spot it at least, I think, on Thursday I'll decide. So no problems. That's it. That's it for session 8. Just onwards with Raft. It continues. We will get there eventually, and I have a very, very solid understanding, I would say now, of how the system works so far. And I'll be implementing other stuff. The data phase needs to come in My Raft so far doesn't do anything other than leader election and heartbeats, which is the part A spec. Ah, God, okay, that's it. I'm feeling myself becoming boring, to be honest. And I've been feeling like that for the past hour and a half, so it's just the kind of necessary recap technical stream. But feels good. I feel on top of it, to be honest. Like all of the refactoring I did today did not break anything. That's a success in itself. So I'm totally okay to just continue with my natural planning. Not deadlining myself and just keeping it chill as you should too. Have a blessed day, and I will see you, the proverbial viewer. I will see you on Friday, either 11 a.m. or if it's an evening session, it could well be 7 p.m., 8 p.m., slightly earlier just because of the lighting. But I'll just say on Thursday when it's going to be. So see you Friday. Adios. Dios míos.